All right, hello everybody. We're going to get started in just a little bit. I want to thank you for joining us today. It's great to see so many already in the meeting, and we'll just give a little bit of time for people to join. Yeah, we're really glad to have you. My name is Daniel. I'm a principal consultant for Improving out of the Dallas office. And I'm really excited to introduce my friend and my colleague, Kevin Jourdain. Now, back in May, if you were with us at these Improving Talks, Kevin gave a thought-provoking talk that opened our eyes to the promise of intelligent automation, the idea that AI could move beyond simple task automation to truly autonomous systems. Well, today's session is a direct sequel to that conversation, but this time we're shifting from what's possible to what's practical, and more importantly, what's available right now. Um, a lot of you will agree that we're at an inflection point. The march towards manual workflows and fragmented bots to end-to-end LLM-powered agents that many now call agentic AI. These systems that don't just follow rules, they perceive context, reason over goals, and execute tasks autonomously. Like we've got retail giants like Walmart that are already replacing dozens of narrow bots with unified super agents, right? And Gartner is forecasting that by 2028, autonomous decision engines will drive 15% of daily business decisions. But this isn't just about the distant future. Today, Kevin will be focusing on tools, patterns, and real-world approaches that are really accessible. Technologies that we can start using now to build toward the near horizon future. In this session, from workflow to work done, practical paths to agentic AI, he'll cut through the hype and give technology leaders and architects a clear, actionable roadmap from pilot to production. Before we begin, just a quick note, we'll be using the Q&A feature here in the Zoom client during the talk. So if you have questions that come up, please type it into the Q&A box, not the chat box, okay? So that we can track it and we'll make sure that Kevin addresses as many as possible in our live discussion afterwards. Okay, so without further ado, please join me in welcoming Kevin Jourdain.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for such a wonderful introduction, Daniel. It is true that we are colleague and friends. Him and I get to work on a very fun project with a client out of the West Coast. And throughout time, you just build bonds and friendship. And it's the nice part of being in consulting. Added words from such wonderful introduction, a little bit more personal this time. I am a husband, a father. I love artificial intelligence. It's a good thing that I'm presenting on that topic. Data and analytics. I love soccer, rugby, and yes, football. And that is the American football or American handball where I was born. I was born and raised in France. And so it's always been difficult to adapt to the paradigm shift of calling a game that plays with the hand called football. I digress. I became very much of a big fan and based out of the Atlanta office. So we have to root for local college. And to that end, I will say, go Dogs. Then below is a LinkedIn QR code. If you'd like to connect with me, I'd love to know you and discuss further about the presentation or anything related about AI. As Daniel mentioned, this is a sequel to my prior talk in May, where we discuss human agents, times, and tools, redefining the future of work. Today, we're going to talk about the practical path to agentic AI. And so what does that shapes up, and what sort of playbook can we follow to absorb, digest, and be thinking about how in the near future we could see that playbook multiplied across different organizations. Let's get started. Let's dive right in. So what you're about to see, role, goal, task, and the unbundle and rebundle framing comes directly from Sangeet Paul Chowdhury's. He published a paper or a blog post, a how to win at enterprise AI. And we've adapted that playbook to agentic outcome-based system. So all kudos to Sangeet. If you'd like to read this paper, is pretty easy to find. More recently at the AI World Fair in San Francisco, he was quoted a lot. He was definitely one of the trending sets of practical forward-thinking path. And it was the other trend was on that note were evolves that were mentioned a lot. And so a lot of what you're about to hear is based on these first principles and how to adapt it to something that pertains to you. And so think about what an organization is. From first principles, you have roles that are broken down into goals and that are broken down into tasks that are the most atomic step with clear inputs and outputs. Those tasks can be labeled as either human performed or machine performed. And this today is already true, right? If you think of the task of invoicing, it's a mix of series of tasks that are both performed by the machine and by the human. The difference is that these have been primarily led by deterministic types of software. The introduction to a paradigm shift for today is around how agentic workflows can reshape the sets of outcomes within an organization. And so by reshaping, what we truly mean is this idea of unbundling and then rebundling. So if you think of unbundle a service into its decisions and tasks, then rebundle those steps into software. An agent plans and act across your tools, escalates edge cases to human reviewers, and logs every action. That's the shift from people managed checklist to software managed outcome. And it sets up our next idea, which is the workflow capture at the decision point that truly moves the process. So this whole premise is really about understanding all of the different entities in an organizations, all the different, how this breaks it down into something more granular, such as tasks. But then when you look at something like, think of more or less as a everyday organization, which are service dominant workflows, right? Where humans are heavily involved. How do we actually leverage generative AI to start understanding the unbundling, because we're able to sort of identify things that are just more distinct? Then can we identify what the unbundle looks like? And when that occur, can we componentize? can we rebundle in a way that can then leads us to a software dominant workflow? You might be thinking, oh, AI is going to replace human beings. I still strongly disagree. The idea is to have increasing outcomes in speed and delivery, but that the humans are still at the center of that organization to make the right decisions to move forward, right? So the idea is to how can we capture a workflow and um, dice it and slice it in a way that can be packaged as its own software, and then have the human oversee the entire outcome, hence the little badge over here, HITL, which stands for human in the loop, and then um, move forward to sort of the next revision of that workflow, which is, can we re-look at the ones that can be re-unbundled, then componentized, and then rebundled, right? And so then you can sort of see this sort of iterations of roadmap and pathways to extract the pieces that can be agentic led or agentic performed, but then human led. Hope that makes sense. All right, moving right along, and let's dive in further as to what this looks like. So how do we even get started? Is this something that enterprise can be thinking about? I think so. I think that we're going to see something like this in the near future. As we know, POCs are fine when we're exploring new patterns, risks, or feasibility. We just make intent explicit. This is for learning, but not shipping. And so when we do talk about production and productionalizing in an agentic solution, like was discussed in the prior talk, the rule is simple: is ROI plus reliability, or we don't deploy. So POCs are fine, right? And you can see this sort of very wordy pathway over here, which identify the purpose, the scope, the outputs, and exit criteria. And a lot of times companies are spending sort of time in here because it's the first exposure as to what an agent can do in an enterprise. So is this going to be ideal for production push? No, it's not, because you might lead yourself towards a isolated sets of agents, and worse, cool demoware. What you need is something that is more ROI driven and reliable, of course. And so what we propose here today is sort of what this looks like in the ideal state. We understand the cash restrictions and sometimes just jumping into something like this, whether this is using companies like Improving or whether this is using internal resources, that can be difficult. But ultimately, building POCs that do not have a roadmap towards return on investment will be probably a waste of dollars. And so, I apologize, I'm getting, there we go. And so, how do we move forward with it? Whatever path we choose, two numbers carry the conversation: accuracy, can we trust it? and latency over cost. And how fast at what dollar amount over the outcome. These becomes decision gates. And so we convert goals into work done KPIs before any build. Time to resolution, error over redo rates, right? Less than 3% of reopens, for example. Dollar impact, up 25% throughput, 50% less late fees. These KPIs are the contract that we hold ourselves to. So, sort of as a punchline, POC equals learn, while pilot equals earn. So we won't ship until we ensure that we can measure it. Where to win? So we talk about the workflow capture in the introduction. We've unbundled roles into goals and tasks and rebundled them into software managed outcomes. Now, where do we win first? At the moment that truly moves the process. Capture the decision locus that moves the process. What does that mean? By decision locus, I mean the exact point where the state changes. A case is resolved, an invoice is approved, a refund is authorized, or a customer is onboarded. If the agent can safely take the decision under an SLA, value becomes measurably right. And we aim the agent at that direction and build outward at that point. And we'll talk about the outwardness later on. Then the second point is the anchor at control points. And this is so crucial where you sit at that decision. The agent must anchor to 4 control points: identity, the system of record, whether the source of truth must be read or written, money, anything that moves dollars, and compliance, audit trail, data handling, retention, human in the loop, etc. These anchors make the decision governed, not just automated. Automation is great, but governed automation is better. Expand from one persona use case to adjacent workflows. And that's sort of the outwardness that I was just talking about. We land with a single persona and outcome and broaden logically. Example, if you start a T1 support auto resolve, maybe you can extend into returns authorization, to which you can extend into post resolution follow up and customer satisfaction. Or in finance, if you have like an invoice 3-way match, you can expand into exception handling. You can expand into vendor onboardings. And so expansion follow the data and control points we have already secured. It looks like there is a chat. I'm going to pause there to see if there's any questions. Oh, okay. That's just providing the links. Thanks, Daniel. Appreciate it.
You, just that as all for health/flexibility.
How do we restate that one more time, please?
Yeah, how do we assess not just the ROI on a particular set of tasks, but we want to look at the whole, all the workforce needs, the workforce health and being flexible.
Yeah, it's if you start with identifying the set of tasks that you have within, and start of wondering how you can rebundle it. How can you take the tasks, unbundle the rebundle, and then measure that return on investment of what it would take to to build such solutions, that will be the right path. That's sort of the approach here. Hope that answers. Any other questions? Awesome.
Yeah, it doesn't look like we have any.
Okay. So this is the paradigm shift. And from SaaS to SaaSol. Um, it's a silly coin term that sounds probably better in my head than out loud. But this idea of when we take all of these tasks and unbundling it, rebundling it into software that is, can be perceived as service as a software. That's sort of the approach and the change. We've been used to SaaS until now, right? Software as a service sells you the tools. It's in the cloud somewhere. It's serverless. It's allow a large amount of scalability. The paradigm shift is sort of be thinking about this idea of service as a software, right? And so that delivers you the finished job, right? As sort of the punchline over here. So how does this break down if you were to do a side by side comparison, right? What you buy is for software as a service is features and API access versus on a service as software, you focus on the outcome service level agreement. Who assembles? Well, often in terms of the SaaS, traditional SaaS, it's IT, right? It's any sorts of app development involved. Versus in this case, for service as software, you can expand to more of a provider for with an agentic runbook. Is sort of getting those tasks identified and then trying to identify and the anchor points, right? Like we talked about. Interface. What is the interface? Well, it's a typical UI APIs combination versus the outcome of contract plus audit. Billing is seats over API, right? And so how much compute am I buying versus over here it's more of perceived per outcome. Success metrics is adoption is usage, whereas over here is based on work done KPIs. So going back on Melissa's questions, if you haven't figured out what those work done KPIs looks like, and we'll touch on some examples later on, then the return on investment might be mute because you won't be able to rely on something that provide a sense of accuracy and work done, and so then you don't know whether you have true return. Upfront lift, configure and integrate versus scope the KPIs like we talked about. Connect tools and then go identify when the go live could be. And last but not least, governance. Your internal policies versus policy gated agent that have been enhanced and augmented with a set of guardrail, right? As to essentially be the lens through which agents can look through. And plus, of course, and that's the most important piece, is human in the loop. This entire workflow is not successful without the humans. It just won't be, unless you just like to go to Vegas and play roulette, and ensure that your entire business is operating under such a risky business, right? Joking aside, it must be overseen by humans. So, what are some examples? We've got the Walmart patterns. Daniel touched on it earlier. And so Walmart announced 4 AI super agents. We got super agent number 1, shoppers; super agent number 2, associates, sellers, and developers, that replaced fragmented tools and became the primary interaction layer. This is a classic workflow capture and rebundling across personas. They have distributed all of this army of bots, but sort of didn't spend the time on figuring out what the new workflow would look like with these bots. And so that's where the rebundling occur across multiple different personas. And pretty much as their names, there is a persona for shoppers, persona for associates and sellers and developers, etc. It established a hub position where the agent as an interface and combined with decision locus, then expand horizontally across adjacent workflows, right? That's the outwardness that we talked about earlier, where returns and replenishment and onboarding could be thought of. Start with, and so what can you do to lift? Is to start with a persona anchored workflow, own its key decisions, and then federate into adjacent flows. Case number 2, Salesforce, with a little Einstein snapping his fingers and magically building 10,000 different autonomous agents. And so Salesforce Einstein Service Agent and Einstein SDR Agent and reported customers built 10,000 autonomous agents on the agent force, leveraging the incumbent CRM hub to rebundle work with agents. And with rich APIs and owned identifiers, such as account, case, and contacts, this shifted to agents that can safely take actions across workflows, support, sales, and marketing. And if you already sit in a data control point, bundle an agent on top to charge for performance. Case versus resolved or meeting books as an example. By meeting books, I mean meeting booked. That's the number of meetings that you booked. And then last example is something that I've touched on in the past in prior discussions, is the success that Amazon had with their plethora of large-scale Java apps that needed to be upgraded to Java 17. So you get the little super Q there coming in, casting a magic power over dated applications. Again, it sounds more fun in my head probably than it is out loud, but and so Amazon used Q Developer Agent to upgrade tens of thousands of internal Java apps into Java 17, codifying an otherwise error-prone multi-step workflow into a repeatable agentic solution. A crisp example of end-to-end to work done with enterprise-grade scale and quantifiable outcomes, speed, and quality, aligned with performance-first adoption. And so how can you lift on your end? Pick one painful engineering workflow, dependency upgrades. Are you living in a tech debt nightmare because you have a application that you cannot take the time to upgrade into and modernize because the cost at the time would be too much? Maybe you should revisit that, because there are, different discussions. There are ways to fast track the modernization of legacy systems. And if you have any questions, you can definitely contact us, because we definitely have a path forward for this to get you out of this nightmare. And so or you'd like to simply upgrade and you'd like for to go from React 12 to or 13 to later on versions, and you just haven't spent the time to do that. So uh, this is something that a workflow, if it's repeatable, if it needs to be done over time, something like this can be reproducible and then go over the first one and on to the next. And so we can help with that as well. And so, um, how do you get started? So we covered the theories, we covered the first principles, the idea of um, role to so role to goals to tasks to unbundle and to rebundle from SaaS to SaaSol. And so, what does this mean for you? How can you get started? Well, these are rubrics that we propose based on business value and readiness. So the business value being the dollar impact plus volume plus customer impact. The readiness being how quickly and safely can we ship? And in order to measure the readiness, we think about three different dimensions. The tolerance for failure. Do you have any, like regulatory or financial risk? Or it's okay, like you're trying to um, build blog posts, while important, perhaps not as critical as ensuring that revenue is coming in, right? And so, how do you measure on that scale versus observability? That's another dimension. Whether there are literally zero logs, we don't have a current way of identifying how it's been done over time. We have zero logging efforts versus full eval harness plus audit and robust sets of data points that we can leverage. Because here's the good news. No matter what the type of data that you have, whether this is semi-structured or structured that we've been used to for the past 60 years, right? We've been well oiled into managing and integrating with that type of data. With the generative AI, we can now treat text as new data points. So it doesn't really matter what data you throw and what your sort of audit logs looks like. If it's text, we can treat it as data. If it's sets of images or videos or audio, we can treat it as data. And so let that be a series of observable artifacts that we can consider and measure across that dimension. And then finally, tool reach. Are there any existing SaaS application on-premise software, or not at all? No APIs. Just it hasn't been thought of. And so, in which case, is it currently in a living into a very manual, office-oriented types of set of tool like Excel? You do everything in Excel. Like, okay, well, there's no API, but maybe there's some sort of tools that we can extrapolate and consider. And then last but not least is uh, the the data. Oh, I realize that my indenting is wrong. There the data gravity is also a sets of dimension. I need to reshape that up. And the sets of dimension for the readiness. How much data have you collected? And so last but not least is the business value. And so what's your quick gut check between revenue savings, ticket volume, customer satisfaction or over experience, NPS score, strategic priority, SLA pain, etc. How can you measure that from 1 to 5? And so let's go over three different examples, one of which we've already discussed. Let's just say tier one support, right? With auto resolve. We've heard it with Klarna recently, who said that their agents can handle 700 full-time employees' work, which later on sort of refined their approach to be AI first and be like, yeah, we'll still need humans. Of course you do. But that can there be a an example of a tier one support that can auto resolve anything? And so your value prop at this point is say a 5 out of 5. Your readiness, you've got your failure tolerance rate as a 2, your observability rate as a 3, your tools you rate as a and 3, and your data footprint to rate as a 2. So all that sum up to sort of a 10 out of 12. And then and on, and you can see that something like this is would be in this quadrant. You have readiness on the x-axis, you've got the business value on the y-axis, and sort of what we condone as a workflow capture that should be considered as part of a agentic implementation will be living in this quadrant, right? If it's high level of readiness, high level of business value, then if you're measuring your efforts to be here, then it is definitely worth investing. If you're in this category, then perhaps move on to something else and let the humans do what they can do best. And so somewhere along the way lies a set of engagements that you can be considering within your organization, and maybe we can help. Maybe a third party vendor can help, or maybe you guys can take that on. Invoice three-way match, very common in the AP finance world. High level of value, readiness. Maybe your fault failure tolerance is very low, right? You're going to make sure that when you're invoicing, that matters. So failing is not an option. It could even be rated as a zero, perhaps. Um, then the remainder of the dimensions we discussed, potential gap, vendor portal access, and document normalization. And so this is part of that quadrant. Definitely something that we could be considering. Last but not least, the Java 8 to Java 17 upgrades. Value is relatively high. It's sometimes it's always the conundrum between don't break the wheel if it works, right? Something that I affect. In which case, sometimes it's better to keep it running and endure the operational costs that are associated with it, and then keep moving forward. But sometimes you don't have any options, and you must go with an upgrade. And so, again, being sort of a hypothetical here, but I could definitely see this as a great candidate. And Amazon has numerous publications on their successes due to leverage of agentic workflows. System design, agent patterns that ship. We talked about the proof of concept earlier, which is great for learning, great for digesting how Gen AI can be thought of as a technology that powers agents within enterprises and beyond. It's a great to have a lot of productivity boost through normal sort of ChatGPT interactions, but then how do you go to the next step? And that is what the presentation was about in May, is how do you start? How do you get started? But then how do you mature for that? How do you establish that roadmap from establishing a POC and ensuring that it doesn't fall as a um, cool demoware. And so, how do you provide this sort of um, uh, system design that you can leverage over time? And so, to which end, think of reliability over novelty, right? And so planner over workers with tool calling, short-term memory versus long-term memory. There's a lot of publications around how now agents are being augmented with short-term and long-term memory. Fascinating publications. Then evaluation loops. It's one thing to keep a human in the loop, but it can be overwhelming if the human is always having to eval manually what the outcome of the agents are. And so there are a lot of techniques around evaluating the outcome of agents on a semi-automated basis. And of course, identify the human in the loop checkpoints, right? What are those anchored checkpoints that you can safely rely on? Data loss prevention and labeling and audit and rollback, all of these considerations. And this is the playbook proposal. Day 0 through 30. This is where we select the workflow, define KPIs, build synth agent, and wire logs and evals. Then you come back in day 31 through 60 with human in the loop to 10 to 20 users, perhaps, depending on the complexity of the workflow, etc. Harden on safety and measure the accuracy over latency. And then last but not least, expand scope or adjacent step, right? How do you think outwards? Introduction to multi-agent delegation, propose performance-based service level agreements, etc. Of course, as always, this comes with a risk. And so before we go into the call to action, here's how we manage risk. Reliability and governance aren't afterthoughts. They're features of the solution. Agent security, right? And so over permission agents in uncontrolled browser desktop actions. There is a recent publications over the CEO of Replit, which is an AI assisted tool that is well perceived in the sort of the vibe coding aspect of things. And so the Replit CEO had to apologize because the Replit tool deleted the database of their customer, the entire database of the customer. And while this was set and true, that Replit did indeed delete the database, it was later on recovered. But again, don't over permit agents to sort of make sense. Let's ensure that there's a minimum level of governance, that if it isn't a human that have been entrusted with strong level of responsibilities, don't entrust that the agent is going to be like, oh, this looks like a database I don't need. So what can you do? Least privilege, right? Scopes per tool in versus API, time box credentials, just-in-time elevation, policy gated actions for money moving steps, refunds and credits, for example. Full audit trail, every agent actions logged into inputs over outputs with a human owner. Human in the loop checkpoints for edge and risky cases. The AI can all solve every single edge cases. And when you find one, don't hesitate to say, hello, you got an issue here. A human needs to overview this. If it can actually be a needle mover to where if that entire workflow that we rebundled, right, handles, let's just assuming 50% of the case. Well, that's a significant productivity boost. But what about the other 50%? A human will have to manually intervene. And so then what does that manual intervention looks like? How do you redefine new sets of workflows that are involving those edge cases, knowing and entrusting that there is the other 50% that has been handled by agents? And this reminds me of a go live we had later on, early on this year. We worked with the clients out of California, and if you're on a call, hello, we miss y'all. It was great to see you today. Um, and the idea was to build a sales funding engine. We wanted to help them in uh, augmenting their business developers to identify sales generation. And so we built this solution and went out and got on the web, crawled the web, scraped the web, mapped it to a local repository database that then their business developers, their BDR people looked at on a daily basis. And while they're so focused before this solution went live on doing the scraping, doing the crawling, reviewing, analyzing, all of that manual work wasn't stripped away. It was sort of lifted and then shifted into something that they could rely on. But then once they got this solution, they were like, wait a minute, what does this mean for us now that we have this incredible incline of lead generation? This redefined an entire workflow. And these were some of the pain points that we experienced. And we sort of didn't anticipate that. We learned together. And this was a great a great highlight of what we're talking about here. Hype traps, AI washed BPOs, right? So demo that passes once, but then fail in production. Does that ever happen? Yes. Yes. There's tons of demoware out there. There's tons of demoware. And so how do you prevent that from happening? And so you replace the proof of concept theater with a thin outcome pilot. And that's really the key there to allow you for identifying whether your worked on KPIs are getting returns so that you can measure that return on investments. And so eval hardness from day one is important. Golden tasks, adversarial tests, regression suites, etc. Error budgets and credit schedule tied to service level agreements, so quality is measurable. That's important. I'm seeing chats happening. I will get to in there shortly. There's some Q&A. Okay, cool. I'll go over the Q&A there shortly. I'm almost wrapped up. We'll go to call to action next. Labor planning, human in the loops rebalancing. The risk here are either over automating and breaking trust, or under automating and missing the return on investment. So if you are not placing the human in the loop in the right places, then you're going to fall in one of these two categories. And so what can you do? Start with human in the loop over edge cases, right? Let's say they're going to oversee all edge cases, redirect when possible, then reduce based on measured accuracy, publish a run book for escalation path. What happens if I do get those edge cases? I don't know. I don't know what to do. Okay, cool. So let's think about what this run book would look like. Okay, cool. Got it. I know I need to talk to Sally if that's the case. I need to talk to Joe if that's another edge case. track time to resolution and a reopen rate to guide the human in a loop curve. And so the risks are known and addressed in the plan. If we align on one outcome with KPIs and guardrails, we can start with a 90-day pilot and show value that you can bank on. Call to action. Identify one workflow with high value and tractable risk. Commit to a 90-day outcome pilot with evals and governance, and propose performance-based commercial or potential expansion stage. And before I go into Q&A, I'd like to promote my friend Daniel, who will be speaking with us on August 20th. And so be sure to sign up for his improving talk about Think Like a Brain, the Quiet Neuromorphic Revolution. Sounds fascinating. With that being said, we'll go over to the Q&As.
Yeah, absolutely. The neuromorphic chip thing is going to be really interesting. So I hope everybody comes back next week. The question that's on the board right now, again from Melissa, any special governance or implementation callouts for the healthcare industry?
This is something that we're happy to address over a call if that's possible. And so to that end, Melissa, we're happy to get further details to sort of address. It's a very, very broad topic. And so it will depend on the use case.
Right. Oh, Sarah's on the board. Hi, Sarah.
Hi,
Um,
Sarah.
are there specific tasks / types of work that agents are already really good at, and any that they're really not yet mature in? And she says hi.
Ooh. Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great question. There are, I will say this, the current implementation of agents that involve um, laws of physics, um, much like an ongoing engagements that I'm on currently right now, is fairly limited. Think of this world type view of things and understanding how um, laws of physics impact entities over another. That is just very difficult to automate. Aside from that, I would argue that understanding images is becoming better and better. Understanding audio is becoming better and better. Any sorts of text-based workflows that have a strong audit trail, it can definitely be thought of as a successful path forward. So as of now, where AI really does not do well is understanding the sort of the world through the lens of law of physics. But otherwise, if there are any sorts of calculations that needs to be done, you can ensure. Well, first, LLMs do not do math. Do not let LLM do math. That's for sure. But tell the LLM agent to use a tool that is going to do the math. In which case, I don't necessarily see that as a weakness because this is a proven a proven pattern.
Yeah. Oh, that we're working on that, right? We've got the agentic tools now that are getting the LLMs access to finding answers that they don't know. So like even web search tools and now math tools, they're coming out, and we're getting close to that point where LLMs, while they don't do math on their own, they might be able to reach out and get some tools to do that kind of stuff.
Yep.
I hope that answers Sarah's question. Um, do you have any last thoughts, Kevin?
No, no, I am good. Thank you for spending the time on this topic that I'm passionate about, and thank you, Daniel, for hosting this, and the rest of the improving crew for setting this up.
Yeah. I really like the phrase POC is for learning and pilot is for earning. That's really good. Now we'll have to see whether or not Stasso takes off. That one I don't know if has got the same pastiche.
Yes.
Um, Now, there was a question earlier that came through. I answered it online, but I'll also answer it here. Whether or not your May talk is available. Anybody that wants to see your May talk or any other improving talks that we've done in the history, you can go visit the Improving YouTube channel. We've just search for Improving Enterprises, and you can see where Improving Talks are. We've got all sorts of other videos there as we are getting acquisitions of other of growing our improving family. You'll see that we're getting a lot more content from those offices as well. So our Argentina office has provided a lot of new videos that have shown up on our channel, and now our India office that just got acquired, they are also putting a whole lot of content onto our channel, which is a lot of fun. Um, so you can join us also next week here on Zoom. And then if you miss it on Zoom, you can catch it on replay on YouTube as well. But next week, we're going to talk about that neuromorphic chip, the neuromorphic revolution with Daniel Scheifler. So that's going to be really exciting. I want to thank Kevin again and to all of you for being part of this conversation. Until next time, à la prochaine, mes amis.